The answer to 1984 is 1776.
Start back right where we left off, Pat, and that's with the whole January 6th so-called investigation they've got going, and then the big question is, how do we get this guy to run for president?
Oh, well, on the January 6th thing, yeah, I heard Mike close off saying, why don't they send my subpoena to Pat Byrne? I think he's drawing attention to an odd phenomenon, which is since the middle of December, January 6th wasn't my idea, but I was out there on the radio since mid-December encouraging people to come for January 4th through January 6th, peaceably rally. Peace, I emphasize peace, I wrote about it, but I did in all these interviews for a month. And yet, no one's asked to talk to me. And I've taken out a full-page ad, actually, about, hey, Congress, I asked for this, why don't you talk to me? They're mounting this whole big investigation, but for some reason, Alex, they're leaving, they won't, I took out this the Washington Post turned down the ad, so I put it up on the internet, and the Examiner let me take out a front-page ad pointing to it, and it's saying to Congress, hey, if you want to talk to if you want to get to the bottom of January 6th, come ask me. Sometimes remember the Matrix when the black cat stutters? It's your little hint that you're
glitch in the Matrix.
That something's wrong. Isn't it odd that the guy who is probably out there second only to Trump calling for this, and I'm out there saying, hey, I did it, I acknowledge it, have me in. For some reason they dare not mention my name. What do you think that's about?
Well, you're the expert. Tell us why they don't want you to be there.
I wouldn't even know where to begin to explain why they don't want me.
Give us a synopsis.
There's a lot of things. There's so many reasons they don't want. Well, but for one reason is I'm going to take the position. So first of all, I have said, I've very clearly asked for it to be peaceful, and I do condone the actions of any MAGA people who got unruly. I think. By
the way, every time you were on my show previous January 6th, you would obsess on let's be peaceful and let's not be violent and let's not be racist.
Just like you were.
Yeah,
on January 6th.
But you were smarter than I was to really hammer it.
Well, I would have
it as a footnote, but you were like hammer.
Well,
hammer.
I was afraid of a psyop, and I think
which happened.
Well, I would welcome a real, honest investigation, and I think we don't know yet for sure what happened. I would welcome an honest investigation. So, and I do want to condemn the people who got, they may say we got suckered into it by Antifa dressed as MAGA. Could be, but in any case, they got suckered. And MAGA, the old saying is, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me.
Exactly.
Never get suckered in. There's going to be opportunities right now, starting this week, to rally. Never be a sucker again. You got suckered on January 6th. We're not going to let it happen again. But I'm also going to take the position, if Congress asks, that the concerns of the rally goers have been vindicated. Not their behavior, but their concerns have been vindicated because of the Maricopa audit and numerous other things that have come to life. And there are other reasons Congress does not want me in front of them. So it's so odd that they will not invite, for all the people, they're making such a big show of getting to the bottom of January 6th, here I am. I'm the guy who was on television and radio asking for it. I'm ready to take responsibility.
Well, I had a blind spot because I've been to so many Trump rallies, and everybody's been so peaceful. We got 1 million people there. Maybe 500 got tricked into doing some things they shouldn't have. But I was really blindsided by the fact that Secret Service told us to go meet the president there, but then there was no Secret Service or extra military there. And I know Trump requested a week before 10,000 National Guard and was denied because I guess that comes down to the District of Columbia. I know the general could probably speak to that, but I mean, they tried to really set us up. And I'm not saying the Secret Service themselves did it, but somebody told them to come get me out of the crowd to lead it. And thank God a lot of the crowd had already left, so they were unable to blame it on me. If I'd have got there right at the start, they could have set me and others up.
Easily.
Why don't we,
I think that's what the game plan was. I truly think that was the game plan. It makes no sense to me. They knew there was probably 1 million people in Washington that day. We were all there. It made no sense to me that that Capitol building was not already surrounded by National Guard or extra marshals or whoever it was. They knew there were going to be that many people, and they probably had some intel that some of those people were going to be unruly. And nothing.
Or they planted them.
Or they
planted those people.
Or they planted.
I mean, we know this. We know that, there's a lot of video evidence, and if they ever truly do this correctly in the court of law, where all evidence is brought to bear, for especially for some of these defendants, all the video that has not been exposed, there's video cameras everywhere in Washington, D.C. Trust me, folks, there's video cameras on every building, at every corner, especially around that Capitol. They have all this stuff. I mean, if somebody jumped through a window, grabbed a cop and threw him on the ground, I got it. You know, but there's a lot of people right now that are in pretrial who haven't even been charged yet, still, and they're in this horrible prison that Marjorie Taylor Greene has done an extraordinary job of starting to expose. And they were fighting a congresswoman in this case. They were fighting to keep her from being able to even go in there to see it. I mean,
Isn't there a legal tradition of Congress, of congressional people being supposed to be able to be inspecting prisons with?
well, I mean, they should be able to. There should be no problem. What are we hiding? This is the United States of America. I mean, we're talking about, these are, the justice system, the Department of Justice, right? The Department of Justice owns the Prison Bureau. And so they should be able to open them all up. In fact, they're responsible for making sure that the conditions are fine and all that. So I don't want to go down the rat hole of that, because I think that there are a couple of congressmen that are actually pointing that out and exposing it. But the bigger issue is this attack on our basic right to be able to speak freely about what I feel, right? If I feel like there was fraud in the election, and in some cases it's been proven, I should be able to say that. And even if it hasn't been proven, if I feel like there's fraud in if I feel like saying something, about you, and I want to say it publicly, I can say it. You might smack me in the face, but that's okay. I mean, but that's the consequence. But in this case, what we're talking about is we're being told to shut our mouths, go home, and don't tell us what rights you have. Okay? And they're going to put the fear of all of this stuff. So when they subpoena all these people for this type of activity that they describe, what they're really doing is they're saying to the American people, it's like what happened to me early on. They're saying to the American people, we can do this to him, and we can do this to you. So if you do this, we're going to come after you. So you just shut your little mouths, and you go back to, whatever middle America, and don't worry, we'll tell you what to do. And we're going to tell you what the outcome is going to be. That's a total attack on all of our rights.
It's an inversion of the most basic principle in our system. In our system, we are the principal, government's the agent. Like if Joe is the homeowner and I'm mowing his lawn for him, he pays me to mow his lawn, he's the principal, I'm the agent in that relationship. I'm doing what he says. That's why if I am reckless and I break a neighbor's window or something, they can come for him because he was the principal. I'm just the agent, or your real estate is your agent. In our political system, we, the citizens, are the principals, and government is the agent. It's something we formed in order to do some things we couldn't do ourselves or as states. And there's a nice and discrete list of them called Article 1, Section 8. And the common thing, the thing they all have in common are the things that we could not do as individuals or as states. And so that's the basis of the relationship. But what you're seeing across the political spectrum is this inversion, and it's happening everywhere from looking at election audits to the school boards. Here you have, Terry McCullough practicing what looked like a very well-rehearsed line and focus group tested line about we have to get over this idea that parents should get to decide what their children are taught. That was a real crossing of the Rubicon. That's inverting the relationship, as is what happened in Maricopa, where you have and what's happened.
Hold that thought, because so what you just said, what he just said, okay, and this is the essence of why this country right now, this is what gives me the hope that I have, because that crossing of the Rubicon, that crossing of that line, mothers, and their children, they don't see politics; they just see their children, and so. I'll bet you, and I don't know the data, but you go look at the data in Virginia, and I'll bet you there's a lot of people that are on the other side of that center line because they care about their children, and they said, you know what, I don't like this particular guy because he crossed that line. That's a huge thing, and that's national. That is going on nationwide, and it's going on nationwide because of what we talked about earlier, Alex, about the Justice Department describing moms, primarily moms, as domestic terrorists because they care about taking care of their damn children.
Never in American history would we ever see it. I think it's important. One thing we're missing also is think about how much the Democrats screamed and yelled in 2016 about how the election was stolen, how the Russians stole the election on behalf of Trump. You mentioned the documentary earlier, Mike. It's called Kill Chain. Everybody should watch Kill Chain. The stars of Kill Chain are Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon, super liberal, Amy Klobuchar, and others talking about
Blumenthal,
Dick Blumenthal.
the fake veteran.
Yeah, yep. That movie talked about how they were deeply investigating the flaws in election voting machines. Now, all of a sudden, fast forward to 2020, here are conservatives or pro-America people dealing with a situation where we saw obvious fraud, and we're talking about it, we're fighting about it, we're exercising our First Amendment rights, and we're domestic terrorists. We're white supremacists. All kinds of labels being thrown at us. This cannot stand in this country. Our First Amendment rights are and our voting rights are the most sacred things we have, Alex.
Expand on that too, just briefly, because we only got 2 mics here today, folks. Expand on that, because I know you helped make Deep Rig and a lot of other things. Yeah. They've been trying to censor films and even censoring clips of the Democrat film you talked about off Twitter and Facebook, their film about fraud, because it's not something we're allowed to discuss. This is unprecedented tyranny.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people know about that movie, Kill Chain. You can get it actually on Netflix. I encourage everyone, Democrats, Republicans, whoever, watch that movie, because what it talks about is election fraud. And this was 2018, 2017. So we decided to do the Deep Rig because we said, we experienced all this stuff after the election. We saw all these affidavits, 3,000, 4,000 affidavits in 6 or 7 states across the United States. All this evidence coming forward, the courts punted. Say, oh, we want to. There's no standing here, and we decided, we need to memorialize this in a movie, in a documentary. So Patrick and I actually thought about it. God bless Patrick for helping finance it, and we created the Deep Rig, which talked specifically about the book that he wrote, where there was fraud, probably everywhere, but there was fraud perpetrated in 6 particular counties in those swing states, where they knew they could, win Arizona by 10,000 votes, win Georgia by whatever it was, 18,000, 14,000. Those are, especially with all these mail-in ballots, it was a concerted effort there. And listen, we have every right in the world, in this country, to say we don't believe the election was valid. It's not a crime to say that.
And we want to look into it, simply.
And we want to look into it.
You know what Mark Zuckerberg's doing? It came out more than 5 years ago in his own company documents when whistleblowers warned the world that he was trying to isolate people to be only on Facebook and to be depressed and alone so that avatars or fake computer identities would be their only friends, thus taking full control of the user's mind. That's just a beta test for what's now rolling out, with Facebook claiming ownership of the metaverse and buying up hundreds of VR companies, and now trying to force its users and employees to solely live in a fantasy world controlled and orchestrated by Zuckerberg and the organizations that he works with. This priest class wants to lock us in our 5 senses here in the 3rd dimension. And to do that, they're creating an artificial electronic prison or matrix to seduce us into giving up control of our bodies and our minds. This is the greatest deception ever. Evil is digging in because it knows humanity is waking up and that group consciousness is forming and that we are beginning to transcend the 3rd dimension. Everything that's being launched against us is an attempt to hold us in the 3rd dimension and not just enslave us, but finally completely destroy us and absorb our energy into this system they're building. This is beyond a satanic ritual. This is beyond anything you've read about in science fiction, because this is actually happening in the real world today. It's so important for all of you that already know this innately and have already witnessed this for yourselves to understand. You are the leaders of the future that must go to the next level so that you and I and others working together can free the rest of humanity before they get trapped in this artificial matrix system the globalists are building.
All I'm offering is the truth.
The film The Matrix, made in 1999, is not original. Documents came out in 1990 from the late 1970s where NASA and DARPA were developing a plan very similar to The Matrix. And all that information is now public. They're attempting to seduce us to give up our 5 senses, not just holding us in the 3rd dimension, but actually creating an artificial slave system so that they can turn us into their programmable slaves. Humanity are not robots, no matter how many times Ray Kurzweil and the social engineers tell us this. But they are trying to turn us into robots.
General Flynn and I stood with the president on December 18th saying what we want is to just open the ballot boxes in 6 places. 6 places. You know, we got 3,006 counties in America. Let's just look 6 places. Count them on live stream TV. Well, through a bunch of fighting, we finally got to open, you know, and I didn't know that was such a crime against humanity to want to open a ballot box and look. I thought that it happened all the time. For some reason, when we wanted to do it this time, they treat it like it's a war crime. But when they want to look at audit elections, they could, you know. Anyway, so we opened it and look at we finally got one of them opened. That was Maricopa. And what do you know?
Maricopa County, Arizona.
Yeah, it took 6 months to get them to open it, and we get it open, and what do you know? The night before they finally get their arms twisted and have to deliver, they delete 1 million election files. Nothing else ticks or ties. There's 284,000.
Well, that was my next question. All the evidence to count in Maricopa, that proved that Trump won, and now you don't hear anything about it.
Yeah, it's like this. Well, I've never seen such a clear suppression of the truth in the U.S. as what they did on that. Because what that audit really shows is if there's 284,000 ballots they made up here and 253,000 that just appear here and 57,000 illegal and 34,000 photocopies, blah, blah. But if you count all of them, Biden wins by 10,000, which the press portrayed as, you see, the audit showed Biden won by 10,000. Well, that only worked for a little bit.
That was the stupidest reaction.
Talk about gaslighting.
Oh,
yeah,
my God, exactly.
So now that's the Attorney General there has it. Other states are piling on. We're in the middle of the pile on by other states. They know it's breaking on them. They know it's breaking on them.
General, how is the empire going to strike back, though? With all this election fraud coming out, the corrupt forces aren't going to just lay on their back. Like you said, they're going to try to stop us from having a real election in a year.
Right. And I think that they're going to continue to focus on how do they maintain control or how do they get better control. So I believe that we're going to see a couple of things. I think we're going to see, and I call it a controlled depression, but some type of financial, just a manipulation or a financial collapse. And
Cyber crash.
So, yeah, that's a separate thing. So we're going to have, I think, some type of controlled depression. I mean, we're already at 6% inflation. For us to go to 10%, I don't think these people have any problems. We're going to get there. So that's number one. I think number two, we're going to see an uptick in other aspects of the COVID. Okay, so we got the various variants. There might even be another form of a SARS that's imposed on the international system, right? The international, because their little plan with COVID didn't work because too many people, the world of what I call the digital warriors or the citizen journalists that are out there, they are fighting for the truth, and so the truth has been exposed about all the COVID tyranny that we are facing. So I think what we're going to see is potentially another type of virus that's imposed on the public. And I hope that that's not the case, but I've seen some indications of that in some of the statements by some of these global elite type of people. The third thing, I do think it's you mentioned sort of a cyber thing. I actually think it could be a very targeted type of a shutdown. Like last August, this past August, I saw where the government did a test of the emergency broadcast system. And we may have shared some of it. You may have talked about that. It was in early August, and it ran for a couple of days, but they did one specific day. The government will say, oh, we do that all the time. It's routine. But this particular one was a little different. It was a little bit longer. It was done in very specific locations. And that got my attention because the emergency broadcast system in this country is where they could shut everything down, everything, and now the government is going to tell you what you need to know. And they do that for a nuclear strike, right? If we're going to have a nuclear strike, or if we're under some sort of military threat.
Over the internet.
Yeah. Oh no, they can take the entire thing. I mean, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, works for the federal government, and the FCC
can send you all to one website.
Everything. I mean, everything. You'll have nothing. That's why ham radio operators of old used to be the ones that could defeat any kind of communications shutdown. So I do think that we could potentially experience that. These are the worst case scenarios. So as a guy who has served at multiple levels of intelligence and has faced our enemies and has studied our enemies, one of the things that we always have to look at is and consider is what are the worst case scenarios that we could face. And those are just a couple. There's probably some others, but this point about this controlled depression, I'm really concerned about because we are moving in that direction right now. And it's as Patrick predicted, I think in like 2008, maybe, I may have my numbers wrong, but about an economic collapse of the system. Well, now they're in charge of a lot of things: media, the tech titans, the executive branch of government, the legislative branch of government, of the U.S. government, and they have the globalists that are basically they're working very closely with. So now they control a lot of things. And those things now, if we say it's a controlled depression, what the hell does that mean, Flynn? That means that they're going to take the us's of the world, people like, the have-nots, and they're going to crush the have-nots to a point where we further divide this country and take it over at the federal
Let me
level.
back up what you're saying, and I know Patrick's an expert on this, and I want both of your
Yeah.
take on it, because this is the most important issue. It's actually on my list. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I do notice patterns, and I've noticed the Davos group, the former head of the Bilderberg Group runs it. Obviously, they're the top of the corporate food chain, run the UN, and they represent the Fortune 500. They openly brag that they're going to use cyber attacks to bring in their reset, that they're going to use a collapse in the world economy to bring in this new global currency, universal basic income. They've now announced as of a month ago that they're officially with the UN. They have the world ID now through the vaccine passport that also ties to a carbon tax passport and a social credit score. So they've got this thing all set up. And then they foreshadowed, as you know, in some of their drills, Operation Lockstep, and then SPARS 2023 that you talked about. They war game all of this, so they have a way to have the battle plans, but everybody finds them, they go, oh, that's just a drill, but really it's the battle plan, as you know, and maybe you can explain this to people. And now they're battle planning, and Schwab has said the next thing will be a giant cyber attack. They're going to save us by taking over, but the cyber attack may take down the old currency. So they're already foreshadowing this. Can you speak to why they do that? And what you're saying is Schwab has said we're creating an angrier planet by creating a depression on purpose to then bring in basically globalist control.
Yeah, there is going to be a financial crash. The question is, do we emerge from the rubble as the USSA, the United Socialist States of America, or maybe we emerge as the USA stripped of the stuff that's really been going on since FDR that got us here. They punched some holes in the Constitution under FDR when they threatened to pack the court. And the result has been a federal government that got 3 times the size it should have, and we're reaching the end of that play. So the question is, are we going to emerge? I've always wondered all my life how that. My father was an actuary, and that's the mathematicians under insurance. Mm-hmm. So he kind of taught me this idea of something being actuarially sound. So all my life, I've looked at these programs and thought, how could the left not see that they're running things, that they're advocating things on an unsustainable basis? This is all going to crack eventually. And what are they thinking? Now I understand. I finally understand. They wanted it to crack. The plan was, we're going to run it until it crashes, and then we're going to merge and control out of the rubble. So our mission is to stop that. And I'm actually quite optimistic because, well, when we get back to election fraud, I'll tell you why. Because I think we're going to get some big changes soon. But
I think, as opposed to my brother here, I am also optimistic like you. And the reason what makes me optimistic is the asset that we have, which is the American people. I think the American people are truly, truly waking up.
Yep.
I think actually the far left communist, people who want to go communist, in numbers is a smaller number, way smaller number than maybe the mainstream media or people feel is out there. I actually think 70-80% of this country does not want to go in that direction. And I think the left has very much overplayed their hand. Now, will they continue to try to stuff things down our throat and do things to try to crush us? They may very well do. But my opinion is, my personal opinion is, if we get through this winter, and we get moving towards the summer where we're gaining more momentum in the exposure in Maricopa and other states, by the way, and more economic malaise comes in, I think that they're going to know that their goose is cooked.
Exactly.
What they do when their goose is cooked is what I fear, and I think this is what you feared.
Exactly. They wanted to have Cloward and Piven and then pose as the saviors, but if we all know they did it on purpose, it destroys them, not America.
Yeah. Go ahead, Patrick.
well, and I think that something key has just happened yesterday and today. Mike is right. Their imposition of tyranny is coming through medical tyranny. But we have, through an open source lawfare movement, and do you know Tori, by the way, the podcaster Tori? Anyway, there's this woman out there with this big podcast that has created an open source lawfare movement. Got 50 Supreme Court, state Supreme Court cases filed against vax mandates and mask mandates. Some federal cases, Simone Gold from American Frontline Doctors, other cases. Those are actually, just in the last week, they're winning. And the Fifth Circuit the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Great. Read the filing. Post that online because the judge is masterful in his filing.
And he supported the TRO
decision
that he granted a week or 10 days ago. He supported it with a blistering decision. The decision spanks. I actually felt a little bad for the other guys. It spanks them so badly for outrageous constitutional overreach. Well, the signal that federal decision sends across all the DOD and everywhere else means that battle, we've broken their momentum in that battle.
Yeah.
That's a big win.
Yeah, and read that. I mean, and post that decision because the judge. I actually, it's when I get some time here in the next 24 hours, I'm going to go look at who that judge is because to me, that's a judge that is actually using the Constitution the way it was designed to be used. When we think about territory or sovereignty, right? We say states have sovereign rights. We have borders that have sovereign rights. Your body is a sovereign thing, right? So the tyranny, this health tyranny that is being imposed on us. So the one thing that it's sort of a big thing, and our founders always talked about it, but the biggest enemy of liberty is tyranny. And so when we see what is happening in our government today, you can't describe it any other way than tyranny, whether it's education, health, the illegals that are crossing into this country. It's the rising rates of crime. It's this allowance of tyranny to come into the fabric of America, and that will destroy the liberties that we cherish. And I always get accused of being a worst case guy, but that's my nature because I've been trained like that in my military days. Because I know the kind of enemies that I have faced, and these are the purest of evil. I mean, if you ever thought that evil existed, trust me, evil exists, and it exists right here at home. It exists in this country right now. So when we talk about enemies, foreign and domestic, I know the enemy's foreign, and now I know the enemy's domestic, and the people of this country are starting to see it. And one of those enemies is described as tyranny, and tyranny in the different branches of our government. Tyranny in the kind of institutions that were created, and as Patrick just highlighted, from World War II to now, it's probably not 3 times the size. It's probably 5 times the size that our government has grown since 1950. Okay, and they can go look those numbers up. I'll bet you those numbers are accurate.
But if you look at the left, they're all embracing the Pfizer shots, the Moderna shots. They're all embracing transhumanism, all at the same time claiming that they're so in line with the earth and so in line with creation. But they worship the creation and thus worship themselves instead of understanding there's the divine transcendence of reaching out into God's wider plan and either getting with that natural program or rebelling against it, which is sin. And I don't say that from some pharisaical, hypocritical, high on the mountain statement. And I say that from deep research and understanding of how this really works. There's really only 2 ways to go: choose God's plan, or choose those that are working against the plan's operation. They've got a lot of excuses and a lot of reasons that you ought to join them. At the end of the day, it's about enslavement. It's about turning over your will to them, and you will be betrayed, you will be destroyed. You look at the servants of evil, they are really a pathetic, hateful lot. So angry they chose wrong, they're trying to claw as many good souls with them as they can. That's really what this is. Any species of crab I've ever caught, you put them in a bucket, they could work together to get out, but instead, any crab that tries to get out, they then go over and grab him and attack him and start killing him. But as long as he just sits there and dies, they're all happy. But it's that one crab tries to get out, they're not about to let that happen. Hence the intergalactic crab bucket system, or the chicken shit dimension. You really want to talk about what Zuckerberg and all them are building, it's the chicken shit dimension, where you go in there believing you're going to find enlightenment, and all you do is find depression and enslavement. Because once they get you in their system, just like the general internet was, they're going to clamp down on it and take all the basic freedoms away. That's the plan. They're going to allow the wild west of VR and they're going to have all the prizes and celebrity worship for people that are involved in there. And then as soon as everybody basically is addicted to it and needs it to have their job or work or live, they're going to drop the boom on people. And that's already happened with the whole lockdowns. That's a forced system to jump us off the tracks we were on onto the metaverse system. And that's their play. Total false reality immersion, a true matrix system being built. We're now being inserted into the matrix. Starts with radio, then TV becomes the center of the household. People have dinner around it now instead of talking to grandma and grandpa and your neighbors and reading books. You now watch the TV. Then it's desktop computers, and it's handheld computers, then it's VR goggles and Google glasses, and then it's them forcing you into that system to use it to work or be able to even do basic business, because that's what all the major companies are going to demand. And then if you don't behave and operate the way they want, you're basically even blocked out of that system and starved to death. Just like if you don't take the poison shots, you're blocked out of the system. It's the same thing over and over again. All of it is used to control you, not to empower you. It's evil from the beginning. It's a snare.
You asked me to ask about get this guy to run for president. He's handed the microphone. Why don't we do that? But.
Well, I can tell you that if I know elements in the Republican Party who are already talking about if Trump doesn't run, it's a draft Flynn movement. There's a draft Flynn movement latent in the Republican Party, just waiting for Donald Trump to make his decision. And I think that we could not find a better president.
I'm not going to
even a bigger bullet on my forehead. Okay, there's already one on my back.
I'm not going to say anything because I'm still his little brother and he can smack me upside my head while I'm sitting next to him.
My dream job is going to be to go work for Mike Flynn and his brother, the chief of staff.
No, I think that the next 18 months is going to be crucial to this country, and I think that your audience, which is a great audience, and others out there, realize what's happening. I think the people of the state of Virginia, we saw it in the state of Virginia, we saw it in New Jersey, we saw it in these local elections. They have overplayed their hand. The question is, can we take it back from them before they do something very drastic, very authoritarian, or some type of black swan event that is created in order for an authoritarian move to take place? That's what my big concern is. You talk about this kind of stuff a lot. And unfortunately, those things can happen. They can be manufactured.
That's why I think Tucker Carlson's documentary exposing false flag aspects is important.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this in the last 24 hours. If people haven't watched those documentaries, that there's three of them, there's 3 parts, that they need to look at. They need to watch them, because I think he did a really good job of exposing exactly what it is, this assault on our liberties. You know, if the destiny of America is to continue to be a free country, and it's a journey, right? And journey as a word kind of intends that it is a long thing. Well, the destiny of America as a free country is on a fast track towards something else if we do not stand up for this country and stand up for our rights, stand up for our freedoms, and get involved in our communities. No more excuses, American people. No more excuses. No more finger pointing. No more saying, I don't do that political thing. People that are in business in this country, especially small businesses who have been able to sustain themselves, you know, these are the times now when you have to rise up and say, look, I'm not going to put up with it anymore. I'm going to get involved in as Patrick has been so adamant about, and all of us, get involved in your civic duty as an American citizen to protect not you, to protect it for the generations that are going to follow us, because our founders did an amazing job, had an amazing vision, knowing that we would be at a point like this in the future, and they protected it for the better part of 240 years. So now it's our turn to protect it for maybe another 240 years.
We're at a very historic moment.
We are. Do you want to talk about some good news and some reason to be optimistic?
Let's spend some time on that. And General, want to bring your sandwich over? Hell, you that on there? You've been working really hard today. Anyways.
I want to tell you, so we've had the way we think of it. So we've formed the America Project, which is which we've talked about. I'll be pitching that later. But there's a ground game, and the ground game is 4 yards in a cloud of dust. Between now and 51 weeks, we are less than a month. We're less than a year from the next election. Absolutely no reason to go violent. In 51 weeks, we are building the nationwide system that can do what just happened in Virginia. And the truth is, Bishop Leon Benjamin, who was behind what happened in Virginia, this wonderful man who set up hundreds of volunteers who went into the precincts and the
African
counties,
American pastor.
300 churches in Virginia.
got them all on board. They're the ones who brought integrity to the Virginia election, and that's why what happened in Virginia happened.
And historical numbers of African Americans voting red for the first time in probably generations.
And we
historical
funded that.
percentages.
We funded that 100%, frankly, and we're prepared to do it in 49 other states.
Great job.
However, that's the 4-yard in a cloud of dust plan. There's a 30-yard pass right now this week for people to get involved with. The big lawsuit that Mike Lindell has promised is coming on November 23rd. This week, with the 26 state attorney generals, Republican state attorney generals, are being approached, being asked to participate in this lawsuit. We want the people of the 26 states to be peacefully letting their attorneys general know that they really expect that they're expected to study this case, and if appropriate, to study this case, consider signing on. It's just like December, only that case was the result of 3 weeks of investigation. This case has far more work, and all kinds of dimensions the public has had no idea about for this year are included in this case.
And the good news is national polls continue to show, 80-some% of Republicans and 40% of Democrats think it was stolen. So we're winning
the
info
momentum
war.
is there. Yeah.
60%, we do a monthly poll, 60% say significant or very significant fraud. Another 10% are unsure. So there's 70%. So only 30% of Americans think Biden. Actually, 28% will say Biden won.
There's a reason why his poll number, I mean, other than the disastrous job that he's doing, poll numbers, which are 38%, there's a reason for that. The moderates, the people didn't vote for Trump because they hated Trump for only one reason. They didn't like the man, so they decided not. They know now that they made a massive mistake. They know now that, they left the country in the hands of these people that are, they cannot be this incompetent, Alex. You think that, it has to be, parts of it have to be planned. What they're doing at the border, that's not incompetence.
Oh, the UN's organizing it.
Yeah.
And then Biden works for him. Yeah, it's all a UN.
It can't be incompetence. And that's what's the sad
They've
part about
collapsed
this.
our southern border deliberately.
Yeah.
And they're blocking people from trying to.
Well, let's say this in closing. Listeners need to understand that are watching this, you are the vanguards. What the general's been saying, it's what we've all been saying here over and over again. And so take this video and take their speeches from this event and others and share it with everyone you know and tell them to share it. That's the chain reaction. So let's all talk about where folks find our forbidden pro-America, pro-freedom information. Infowars.com, newswars.com, band.video, and then talk about the initiatives, what you guys are doing.
So I'm going to give the plug. I want everybody to visit theamericaproject.com. That's an organization that General Flynn advises us on, but Patrick and I are on the board of and are founding members of.
People have to get behind it now. Tell them
We have to get behind the America Project now. It's www.theamericaproject.com. Go on the site, become a member. It's free of charge. Get involved with us. Get connected.
It's a network of networks. We are the guys who know everything from all the different networks of doctors who are fighting medical tyranny, lawyers, Latinas for America.
Grassroots organizations
Moms for
across the
America,
country.
Women's
Moms
Fighting
for America.
I mean, it's a
If you want to be free, come
concerned
join the
citizens
fight.
defending freedom. I mean,
And
there's
it's
a lot of-
nonpartisan.
Right.
It's nonpartisan. It's not a partisan play. We are pro-freedom, pro-America.
Pro-Constitution.
Pro-Constitution.
Think of us as like just.
I don't care if you're white, black,
He's a
orange,
libertarian. We
purple,
used to be
pink,
Democrats.
polka dotted. It doesn't make any difference. This is about this country's future. Get involved in this country and figure out how you're going to get involved. Not everybody has the fiber to serve in the military, but you have got to figure out how you're going to serve this country. And you do it by, if no other reason, if you just want to be kind of meek and quiet at home, but you're like, I know I got to do something, join this organization and find out what they're doing and then help them in ways that you never thought you'd help. So my big thing is local action has a national impact. You don't get involved in your communities, you can't complain. So get involved in your
And
communities.
America's the target because if the globalists can take us down,
That's right.
the whole world's going to fall.
Phase one, have you noticed, phase one also includes, besides America, Brazil and Australia.
Exactly.
That's why they're working on Australia. It's crazy what's going on. Did you ever think you'd see the Aussies who used to be like the Americans?
I'm proud of the Brazilians. So the Brazilians are fighting.
Today, the Australians right now, in the last 24 hours, the Australians are rallying at their nation's capital in Canberra, and they have a mega rally there to basically say, because they're about to come out in Australia with all kinds of tyrannical rules, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people that showed up in the last 24 hours.
Millions.
I mean, millions, exactly. That's a good video that I was sent today.
So this
from
is
some
the fight
folks.
for human liberty
This is
worldwide,
it.
and we're one of the main epicenters.
Yep, this is it.
Powerful.
Thank you for all you do, Alex.
Oh no, thank
Yeah.
you guys. I'm 100% behind what you guys are doing. I know we met in Florida 6-8 months ago. And we talked about this, and I'm just glad that Patrick's fighting so hard, and like you guys, all of us together, and the viewers are the core of the resistance.
You're going to have in 10 days, the Supreme Court's going to have a case that's going to let them revisit what they punted last December. They're going to get a chance to revisit. It's a different political environment, and the case is far better, and it argues a novel legal argument that wasn't made last December. The Supreme Court, I think, is going to take, I really think the Supreme Court has to take this. I know what's in it. I can't know, I don't know if Lindell's right, it's going to be 9-0, but in any fair world, it would be.
Well, I can't wait to see your speech and your game plan one more time. The website.
AmericaProject.com.
The America Project.
No, America Project
America
works.
Project.
Yeah.
Both work.
Both
but-
work.
yeah, both works.
Folks, spread that. 1776 Part 2. Let's do it together peacefully.
God bless.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
job.
you.
All right. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for all the time. All right.
I get it.
The answer to 1984 is 1776.
InfoWars has been banned, arrested, attacked, and threatened.
And so, believe it or not, I think you all get it. It literally, I guess you all, I know you all know it. I'm sorry to go on so long. Thank you.